9th of November 1989. East Berlin. Night air seeps through a cracked window. Harsh lights bleach the archive floor. Dust drifts above long shelves of files. Major Oleg Sidorov holds the destroy order. He commands this floor, and every step will be traced to him. Outside, horns and shouts rise as crowds press toward the gate. He must act at once. The goal is clear: remove human trails that could expose sources and officers. He assigns men to shredders, burn drums, and pulping bins that will run until dawn. He means to follow the rule without a gap, until his hand stops on one folder stamped Operation Glassbird. He reads the coded cable twice, once for content, once for order. It is not a long message. The priorities are clear enough to fit in his head. Category read files on human sources first, then case correspondence, then technical reports, and the rest if there is time. He weighs the reason behind the list. Exposure brings arrests and revenge. Living people are the risk, paper is only the path. The room is his to run, so the goal narrows. Break the path at once and keep control over every step. He turns the keys in both fire doors and feels the bolt seat. 2 men are posted at the stairwell with instructions to log any face and stop anyone who is not on his list. He tucks the steel ring back to his belt so there is no doubt about control. The horns and shouting outside surge and fall. A radio in the corner says the borders are open, but the voice is thin and uncertain. Until a direct order changes, he treats it as rumor and moves to the work at hand. He builds a line that will not choke if one machine fails. 3 shredders are pulled forward, 2 burn drums set against a vent, and a water pulping bin placed last where the drains can take it. He puts chalk to board and draws a simple flow so no one can claim confusion later. Pull, log, destroy, witness sign-off, ash or pulp check. Under each word he writes a name for who will touch the bag at that point. A clean chain is not a luxury now. It is the only ground he can defend when asked. The card index stands by itself on a steel cart. He marks it for last because it controls the order of everything else. While it exists, he can decide which crate moves first and which waits. He assigns a clerk with neat handwriting to the ledger, and a second to check bag numbers and clock times. Every bag must pass under his eye before destruction. He sets the weakest shredder to chew administrative binders, travel forms, maintenance notes, things that can wait and will not jam hard. The strongest machine is kept free for source files that are dense and often stapled. He walks the aisles and speaks to no one as he marks 2 crates with chalk excess. They hold harmless manuals and training handouts. If there is a sudden inspection, those crates can be pulled into the open and opened without damage to the real work. The marks are insurance for minutes he may need. He measures the distance from each station and clears a path so there is room to carry bags at speed without tripping. Control is not only an order. It is a layout that keeps hands moving. The phone on his desk rings with the rezident on the line. The message is a single rule: no paper leaves the building. He listens to confirm there is no change, then hangs up and repeats the rule to the floor without raising his voice. He does not add opinion. He opens the destruction ledger and writes his name and the time. He uses a heavy pen so the ink will not fade. The signature is not ceremony. It is a line drawn under his responsibility for the outcome. He begins the first cuts himself. Agent lists and payment ledgers come down in stacks that weigh more than they look. Names run in clean columns with numbers next to them. He pulls the first sheet from the top of the first ledger and tears it by hand into small pieces, mixing them into the burn drum so that no long strip can survive those columns intact. He times the load, watches the flames, and feeds the shredder on the left with the rest. Power flickers once, the lights dim, and he feels the floor pause. He starts the small generator at the wall so the machines will not die mid-run, and he sends a runner for fuel, 2 cans at least. He expects a long night because the room still holds too many names. Checking the first drum, he stirs the ash and finds clumps that have stuck together. The paper is damp and resists flame. He uses a steel poker to break the mass apart and pours alcohol to finish the job. The heat blooms and lifts, and the smoke thins. He notes the time it takes for a full bag to reach ash. He adjusts the order of crates, pushing the most sensitive closer to the drums as the noise outside grows. A junior archivist hesitates over a family file that holds letters alongside operational notes. The hand that holds the file shakes. Oleg points to the pulping bin. The rule does not change for personal pages, and he cannot leave paths where someone might look for mercy. He calibrates the line like a machine. Bags arrive every 3 minutes at first, then every 2 as hands learn the feel of the work. The clerk calls out times for the ledger. The witness signs next to them. Oleg walks the line again and again, looking for gaps. He tells a man to switch the weak shredder off and clear the blades. He does not want it to seize on a thick spine and slow the room. Outside, sirens pass and fade. Inside, the rhythm holds. Pull, log, destroy, check. He moves the sensitive crates one more step closer, wanting shorter carries for the names that could cause the most harm. He is aware of the weight of what leaves the shelves, but he does not let that turn into hesitation. Each bag that goes to ash removes a line that could lead back to a living face. He writes another line in the ledger, his name beside the time, making the process carry his mark at every turn. The chain he built is his protection. If someone asks later why something burned and something else did not, he can point to order and record and show the reason. He has made the room into a system, because he knows that only a system stands against both the crowd outside and the questions that will come after. A crate coated with a harmless label sits low on a pallet near the aisle bend. He lifts the lid and sees the red stripe before the title. Operation Glassbird. Under the cable's rule, the stripe means it should go first to flame. He knows the file from earlier briefings because it was held out as an example of careful line work. Inside are source handling notes, placement instructions for planted items in papers and magazines, and a sealed annex. The annex maps a disinformation channel. It is not gossip. It shows routes, timings, and how stories were moved across borders. He understands what will be lost if this goes to ash. He studies the annex cover and reads the cross-references that tie case numbers to Western broadcasts. A simple table runs down the page with dates and signal marks, matching briefings he has heard against the timing of specific rumors. He sees a claim about a submarine defect find its way from a controlled writer to a radio voice 3 days later. The chain is plain enough to check. If this burns, there will be no proof when others later deny and invert. A lie hardens when only memory remains. He checks the order again. Destroy all. There is no exception set down for historical truth. The rule is clean, and he is the point where the cost is paid. He looks at the floor clock and the two guards at the stair and measures gaps in the work line. The ledger times stack close now, and any pause will stand out when the log is read. He flips the folder and peels off the metal fasteners with care so the paper will not tear. He pockets the clips so the sound of metal will not betray him later. Without the bindings, the stack lies flatter, the air between sheets pressed out by his palms. Less bulk means less print through a coat. He sets the empty folder beside the crate and covers it with a manual so that casual eyes see only gray cardboard. He needs a cover that fits the system he built. He calls for a bag and assigns a serial to Glassbird in the ledger with his own hand. He marks the burn time a few minutes ahead and writes the witness name on the line while the clerk watches. He asks the clerk to sign now on the ground of speed and control because late minutes will be a crush. The clerk hesitates at the unusual pre-sign, so Oleg points to the column headings and cites the procedure he wrote for this room: bag number, time, witness, sign-off, and he keeps his tone flat. Certainty reduces questions. He moves the bag forward in the queue so the log and the floor will agree. He fills the marked bag with weight that will not hurt anyone if the bag is opened later. Training sheets and blank forms carry mass without names. He checks the feel by hand because the hand is his scale tonight. The weak shredder at the far table screams as a man feeds a thick binder into it. The blades seize and chatter. Heads turn toward the noise. The break in focus is enough. He slides the real Glassbird stack under his coat flap on the left side, keeping his elbow pressed in to hold the paper. A single page slips against the cloth and wants to drop. He turns his forearm in and clamps it to his ribs. This is the first open risk tied to his choice, and he makes his body into a vise until the sheet lies still. He carries the decoy bag to the burn drum and feeds the top layer in. He stirs the fire himself with the steel rod, so there is no doubt who destroyed the item the ledger calls Glassbird. Heat climbs into his sleeves and ash lifts and clings to his cuffs. Smoke marks his coat more deeply now, which will help if anyone later remembers a smell near him. A supervisor from upstairs steps into the aisle asking about a radio report of open gates. Oleg shifts so his back meets a shelf edge and his coat hangs closed. He sends the man to the generator room with a firm instruction to check fuel levels and report back. He turns to the ledger again and reads the last 10 lines to see that the false burn sits between true entries at even intervals. Patterns hide lies. He tucks the real stack deeper into an inner pocket he had unstitched weeks ago to carry maps on trips. That pocket now serves as a cutout he did not plan for this use. He lifts his eyes to the ceiling corner where a camera once watched. 2 days ago, maintenance removed it for service. He had noted the blind spot then. Now he stands inside it. He returns to the flow of crates and pushes the pace on sensitive files, because the room's rhythm must match the ledger's claim about Glassbird. He chooses dense stacks that burn with the same slow draw as the decoy would have, and feeds them close together, so the smoke rises thick at the minute he marked. He checks the ash bed and spreads it wide so it looks as if a major set has gone through. He calls for the witness to initial the next lines without delay and keeps the drum turning so the heat does not dip. If anyone asks, they will recall strong smoke at that time and his hand at the rod. He does not dress the choice in big words. He knows he has broken the rule he underlined at the start. But the annex pages show a mechanism that will be denied as soon as files are gone. He thinks of the years to come when men will argue that no such channel existed, that no rumor was guided, that the reach was less. He weighs this against the risk to living names. The source notes are thin and could be pulled later and sealed if needed. The annex itself is the core and names processes more than people. He accepts that he will have to sort that line with care if he sees mourning. He checks the weight of his coat by leaning left as he walks to test how the paper moves when he turns. The stack does not slip. He tightens the belt one notch so the flap does not gape when he reaches forward. He signals the clerk with 2 fingers to shift a bin load so the aisle stays clear near the stair when he will need to pass. He listens for the guard's steps and counts their pause at each landing, because he will want the gap when their backs are turned together. He keeps his face neutral and his hands busy on the floor so no one sees the new plan written into his movement. Heat piles under the lights as the hours stack. The floor slicks with pulp water and footprints print and fade in it. Smoke hangs low and makes the air taste like coin. Time narrows to the next bag, the next stamp, the next stir of ash. Outside, a swell of chanting rolls up the walls, then ebbs, then rises again. He cannot count the bodies beyond the fence, but the pressure in the sound presses him forward. He orders the last source crates to the drums. Once names are ash, the core risk drops. He wants that threshold crossed before dawn takes the room. He runs a finger down the ledger to the totals and adds twice. The numbers hold. Category red is complete. He draws a line under it and shifts 2 men from the sensitive queue to the binders that clog the weak shredder. That frees his hands to move between drums and ledger without a tail. He writes the change in tasking in the margin and initials it so the record fits the floor. He thinks about what will remain when the hours are scrubbed into account. Living people will sleep easier. Memory will take the weight of missing pages. A guard at the stair calls out that he needs relief. The man's face looks gray in the light. Oleg tells him to stand down for 10 minutes and takes his place. He steps into the corridor and the sound softens. The hall is long, empty, and holds no eyes. Paint curls from a vent cover. A lamp hums and flutters. He walks the length once to taste the timing of the guard's circuit and the echo of his own steps. The route past the checkpoint fixes in his head as lines and pauses. 10 minutes are enough to set his next piece. He stops where the wall grill sits a palm above knee height. He had loosened 2 screws during a past inspection under the pretext of checking for dust. He slides the metal aside and feels the lip of the duct with his fingertips. Cold air breathes against his hand. He eases the Glassbird stack from his coat and lays it behind the grate with the sealed annex tight against the duct wall so it will not warp. A folded scrap wedges the papers in place. He notes a scuff on the paint as a mark he can find fast. He pulls the grill closed and checks that the screw heads sit as before. He does not look back when he turns. Smoke coughs from a drum in the far corner. The bed of ash has a crust and the flame gutters. He opens the fuel can and pours, then works the steel rod through the mass until it breaks and breathes. He uses the thick smoke as cover to step to the wall phone and call the generator room. He confirms that they can cut power on his word and that the backup switch will hold dead so the floor stays dark. He does not plan to use it, but a shadow is a tool if the corridor tightens. He hangs up and checks the clock face. Minutes are thin. He orders a sweep for stray pages. Men drop to knees and push hands under desks and along skirting. He sets a bin at the end of the aisle and watches as edges and slips come in, then tears them again by hand before they go to pulp. Loose paper is the easiest way to be caught because it makes its own path. He calls the line together and has each witness sign for the last set of burns. He closes the ledger, signs the last line, and stamps the book with the steel seal. The record now shows a clean floor. Light slips at the window frames with a gray edge. A call comes to stand by for new instructions. He answers that destruction is complete. Delay invites oversight, completion ends questions. He walks alone to the grate and drops to a knee as if tying a shoe. He loosens the 2 screws with coin-scraped fingernails and slides the metal back. The stack lies where he left it. He pockets it in the hidden seam, presses the cover against his ribs, and smooths the coat so the cloth hangs straight. He rises and carries his calm down the corridor. At the checkpoint, a sergeant asks him to open his briefcase. He sets it on the table and flips the catches. Folders and a pen case lie in plain view. There is nothing in it that matters now. He waits without filling the space with talk. A second guard reaches out and sweeps a hand down the front of his coat and along the sides. The pat is cursory. The inner pocket holds flat and does not print through. He keeps his breath slow and steady so his chest does not press against the coat. The nod comes. He passes the briefcase back to his hand and steps into the stairwell. At the door to the archive floor, he stops only long enough to hand the key ring to his deputy. He tells him to seal the hall and wait for new orders. The man salutes and turns away at once. The movement gives Oleg the empty space a departure needs. He steps into morning that is more gray than blue. A pale strip hangs above roof lines. Smoke clings to his coat and skin. A group of men stand at the corner and look toward the street where horns still sound. No one watches him. He walks at a pace that looks like a man who has worked a night shift and thinks of a bed. He reaches his car and opens the door. The briefcase goes on the passenger seat. He starts the engine. He does not touch the inner pocket until the car moves because the risk of a search drops once the wheels turn and the building is behind him. Back inside, staff push brooms through ash and wipe black rings from the drum rims. The machines click as they cool. Soot streaks mark the walls where boxes stood for years. The room that held decades of human life has become piles of fiber and dust. On paper, every line of Glassbird went aflame with the rest. In truth, it did not. He drives into a city that is opening itself in waves and carries under his coat a narrow stack that fixes a chain of lies to dates and hands. His choice leaves a seam that later readers will find, and the map he saved will change how people tell that war. By dawn, the ledger is closed and clean. Ash and pulp cover the floor, and his name sits under the last line. Steel doors are bolted. Cold air meets him as he steps out with one folder flat against his ribs, a file the record says is burned. He has protected living sources in ash and kept a thread that can check the lie he expects to harden, so the cost now sits with him. He leaves the building changed by his choice, the archive changed by his hand. As morning opens, he knows the pages under his coat will shape how others tell this night, and that his own fate will be tied to that record.